So the modification process in New Jersey involves a lot of communications with the mortgage servicer and my client, gathering all the financials and making sure those financials are properly submitted to match the guidelines imposed by the mortgage servicer and the loan investor, the owner of the mortgage loan. That process is complicated, long, confusing. It's something you really need to work with an expert for several reasons I'll address later. Point here is this. The modification, once it's granted, resolves your home problems, gets you current even if you've been late for any length of time, and keeps the bank off your back, lets you sleep at night because you're current, no default, no foreclosure, no risk to your home. That's the modification. Do you qualify for the loan modification? There is a lot of pressure in the industry, the modification industry, to sell people modification without answering that question first. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, do you know whether you're eligible for a loan modification? I can tell you. Let's talk for a couple of minutes. That's the first question you have to ask. That's the first question you have to have answered by any expert you work with before you start buying the process and hiring someone to get the loan modification for you. Why would you invest in a loan modification if you weren't going to get the modification at the end of the process? Now, truth be told, a lot of so-called experts in loan modification don't know. They don't know whether you're going to be granted the modification. They just don't know. They'll urge you to file a modification application, they'll urge you to pay them to do that, but they're not. They don't know enough to be able to tell you, yes, you're eligible. So the first question you have to ask any expert you work with, am I eligible? So what's the best way to get the loan modification approved? Well, the best way is to know what terms you're eligible for under the mortgage servicer's guidelines and the investor's guidelines and the federal regulatory guidelines that govern the mortgage servicing industry. Does that sound complicated? I hope so, because it is. Remember I said the first question you need to ask to the expert you're going to work with is, am I eligible for a loan modification? Here's the second question. Great, I'm eligible. What terms am I going to get? What's the modification going to be? And again, sadly, most so-called experts in modification don't know how to answer that question. They don't know. They pull your paperwork together, they push it at the mortgage servicer, they hope for the best. They say, hey, yay, I got the modification and here are the terms. Or I'm really sorry, we tried our best, we didn't get you the mod. But you should be able to know, one, are you eligible? And two, what terms are you going to get? That second question is what makes the mortgage home loan modification process in New Jersey so complicated. The person you're working with, the expert you're working with, has to know what the guidelines and the regulations are in the federal rules that govern the mortgage servicing industry, and they have to know the internal guidelines for the mortgage servicer, and they have to know the internal guidelines for the mortgage investor. That's not so challenging when it's a government-owned entity, FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. It's a lot more complicated and deals with a lot more expertise and know-how when you're dealing with privately owned mortgages, which is a vast majority of the mortgages out there in the community. So, you've asked the first question and you know that you're eligible. You've asked the second question and you know what terms you're going to get at the end of the process. And those terms work for you and they make sense. And the time to file for the application is now. So you retain me, someone like me, if you can find someone who knows the answer to those two questions before you get started in the full process. So what's the process? I gather your financials, or my office gathers the financials. We talk with you about when to file, when to wait. We discuss best strategies and the effect that the filing has on a pending or existing foreclosure complaint. We deal with the strategic questions involving foreclosure as it intersects with loan modifications applications under the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. Again, if this sounds complicated, it is. But that's the process. From you, I need your financials. From you, I need you to do your homework. If I ask for tax returns, you get me tax returns. If I ask for bank statements, you get me bank statements. We get the whole package together, properly done, to target exactly the terms that we think we can get for you under their modification guidelines, and we go get it. And at the end of the process, if we get something different, the modification company is on the hook for violating the rules unless they can provide an exception to them, which is very, very rare. So, process, find out whether you're eligible, find out what terms you're likely to get, go get them in a strategic and intelligent and prepared way. Work with an expert. Work with a New Jersey mortgage foreclosure attorney. Work with a New Jersey modification attorney. You have to be dealing with someone who knows what they're doing in the foreclosure process and in the modification avenue. So, reach out to me with any questions you got. I can help.